this evening, on tonight, I would say. Thankful Tuesday to you all. Welcome to Loosen the Cords That Bind. This segment, Let's Talk About It. My name is Dr. Eleanor Thompson, and I am the CEO of Loosen the Cords That Bind LLC. It's a for-profit business, and the part of that business is really therapy and counseling, right? But however, I am the host on tonight, your host, I would say, and I thank you for joining in on whatever platform that you may be on or wherever you're listening from. I would like to take time out to thank God for allowing me to see another day in the land of the living, and I thank God for this opportunity. I thank God for this platform that He has allotted me to be a part of in this season, in this particular season. And I also want to thank God for uh, Pastor Paul Frampton, Frampton Paul, and his lovely wife, Elder Michelle, Lady Michelle Paul. They are the owners of True Life Radio, and I thank God for them. They are definitely God's gift, and this radio station has really been a blessing and to me. And they just have some various programs and things, and I think that everyone can glean something from it. If you can sow into it, that'll be awesome, and or just pray. Just for the continuation and the support of this particular station. When you get an opportunity, could you please like, click, and share? I would appreciate that. And again, I'm on this platform every second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, every second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, right? And share that so others can hear it. Share it so others can hear it. Now, I'm reiterating to you that this is a platform for domestic violence, but usually, sometimes I often discuss things that pertains to life, relationships and things of that nature, which we all can partake of. Not only that, maybe the domestic violence is not for you in this season, but it may be for someone that your path may cross, and you may be able to share with them something that could save their lives or help them out on their way, on their journeys. Amen. And also, again, there are people up there that are going through and we don't even know it. So, even ask God, even in our time, just to be sensitive to our fellow men. Sometimes people don't tell you, but, if you have the Holy Ghost, you can, He will, allow you to see some things or hear some things. Not everything, but you'll be able to help someone else. The sensitivity of it all. Amen. So tonight, again, my name is Dr. Eleanor Thompson, and I would like to share these numbers with you before I get started. Safe Horizon, if you are in any kind of abuse or situation, okay, you can, if you need resources, these people have a plethora of resources. All you have to do is reach out to them, right? And that number, and their Safe Horizon, the number is 1-800-621-4673. Again, that number is 1-800-621-4673, right? And that 4673 spells HOPE, HOPE. And the next number is a hotline for abuse if you're outside of New York City, and that number is 1-800-799-7233. Again, that number is 1-800-799-7233. And those last four numbers spell SAFE, SAFE. Now, if you want to reach out to me for any reason, questions or whatever you may have, that number is, you can reach me at 1-800-454-4639. 1-800-454-4639. Now, thank God again, and just know that in an abusive relationship, you don't have to stay there. It's not it's not etched in stone. You can come out, Sometimes we stay places because we don't have no any way out. But there is a way out. But all you have to do is make that first initial step. Once you make that step, everything else it'll be good. All right. So just make that step. Don't be afraid to make a step. Step. Put one foot in front of the other. Right. Make that step. Make that step. Okay. Now, in the last session that let's talk about it. I had a conversation with you on the different aspects of shame and guilt. Right. And then I continued with various behaviors of people feeling shame because of things that had happened to them and the self-defeating actions that goes along with that. I also dealt with being who you are. Like sometimes when we go through certain things, we try to be like other people so that maybe we can feel loved or liked or whatever. Um, be who you are. God has made us, um, you know, uniquely, because we were fearfully and wonderfully made. He made us in a unique way. We are not a carbon copy. Don't try to be like anyone else. Be like who God has made you to be. And it's okay if you don't fit in. It's all right. Because sometimes shame, because dealing with shame again, will make you feel that you have to do certain things to fit in with different people. Let them go about their business and be you. You don't have to change yourself to fit in with someone else. Just be who you are, right? So we dealt with the shame part of it, and and the forms of shame as well as guilt. Guilt focuses basically on our behavior and actions, while shame focuses on ourselves and how we appear to other people. So sometimes that's and like I was saying in the previous session that this is such you know um, a cultural thing now where everything is image. You have to be a certain way. You have to look the part of something to be a part of something. So sometimes that's why we get into trouble and things like that. And I was saying how people sometimes lose their lives because of things of that nature as well, trying to be like everyone else. Now, if you're listening in for the first time, it may sound strange to you because to those who are coming on, like I said, are just tuning in for the first time. If so, please go back and listen when you have an opportunity or you have a chance to the previous sessions, and then I would say that you will get more clarity, and that way, it'll be more clear to you what I'm saying because I can't go back and say all that I've done or spoken of. I had that conversation with you about, right? So I'm dealing in anyway. I'm dealing with rape. I dealt with the various components, basically of rape. And tonight we will continue to talk about rape and trauma, right? And so allow me tonight to have this conversation with you. Okay, let me have this conversation with you concerning this. But first, I'm going to deal with trauma and what causes trauma, like that. And next, after that, then I will deal with the other part of it, the rape part of trauma. But I'm just going to deal with trauma first and foremost. So what is trauma? Trauma is a deeply distressing, as I was reading, the definition for it is, it's a deeply distressing or disturbing experience or life-threatening with lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being, right? So that's the definition of trauma, right? Now, trauma can be caused by any overwhelming negative event that causes a lasting impact on the victim's mental and emotional stability. While numerous sources, I would say, of trauma are physically violent, because you have that, and that's what I dealt with as well when I was dealing with trauma before, with the violent aspect of it and abuse, right? In nature, others are physical or psychological, I would say. So you have the physical part of it, and you have the psychological part of trauma. So and at that aspect, there are some common sources of trauma may include rape, as what I'm dealing with right now, um, domestic violence, which is an ongoing, relentless stress because it's stressful. When you're in a relationship of a domestic violence per se, is very stressful because you don't know sometimes which way the person the abuse is coming from. And another part of trauma could be another source of trauma. I would say could be the death of a loved one. Sometimes that traumatizes us uh, per se, especially with being close. Anything with death has to do is traumatizing, for some concern, basically. Now, witnessing an act of violence, um, like a plane crash, then you have the horrific images of people jumping out of windows, like per se, um, 911. Now, it was traumatic. It was a very traumatic thing for I think it was the whole world was looking on. It was very traumatic how you saw the airplanes going straight into the buildings and things like that. So I was even traumatized if I was thinking about it. When like I said, when I'm talking to you or discussing things with you, it blesses me and it helps me as well. It brings me to another part of deliverance, right? So when that hit, when that particular thing for the airplanes, for the plane hitting the World Trade Center, because at the time I was working in the hospital, mental hospital, and I was on the higher floors. So I would see an airplane, they was flying at night or whatever. I'm looking at the airplanes coming. I'm like, oh my God, the airplane's coming to the building. But, it doesn't, of course. But in that moment, because of that experience from seeing what happened, that kind of triggered something, and it left a little kind of thing with me, right? So sometimes these witnessing of act, violence and things like that, they can play a real big part in how we react to different things because those images are still like you in the head, just like the people jumping out of the windows of the buildings of the plane when the plane crashed and stuff like that. They look like birds flying out of the window and stuff like that. But they were human beings. So what is always going to be a traumatic thing, part of like that, especially it will always be a reminder of what happened, right? So it is possible to sustain trauma after witnessing something from a distance. Like young children, especially, they are very vulnerable to trauma and they should be psychologically examined after a traumatic event, right? The event is something that has happened to cause that, which is, right? So to ensure their emotional well-being, because a lot of times we think that children, or they'll grow out of it, or something that happened to them, they'll just grow out of it. Not all the time. Sometimes they suppress that stuff. They suppress it. And what happens is then you have a bigger version of it later on, and it's like a big monster that you can't get rid of because it wasn't dealt with when it was I'll say a little dust ball. Now it become a big old mountain. And it's the same thing as well as it's like when the children are they have like I will deal with that later at some point too, where children I will deal with that with abuse and incest, and I will deal with that on that level. So and when I deal with it, it's gonna be just gonna be it's going to be what it is, and I'm not gonna hold back anything when I deal with that part of it, But sometimes when children they become traumatized when if they have been molested, and they keep that stuff for a long time, and I always wondered why people wait so late and so into something before from sometimes years before they say anything. It's because that was their process. They have to go through that process. Sometimes, because sometimes the children, they been especially in an incestuous relationship. First thing that the perpetrator will tell the child, if you don't do this, well, I'm going to kill your mother or your whoever that they're close to, right? So of course, now picture that child has to deal with all that stress and stuff like that. So they kind of try to get rid of it by doing stuff or whatever. And you wonder why sometimes you see these children in the street are always getting into things. It's not because they are bad, because it's something happened that they're trying to get rid of because they don't know how to process it. So, it has a lot of different things you have to deal with that. But we just have to, like I said, when I get we've been beginning to that, then I'll go a little deeper into that. But the children have to go through a whole lot in the process and stuff. And sometimes our bodies are just wonderful because they're fearfully and wonderfully made. And it has a system where sometimes the Lord won't allow us to short surface because something will shut down. He'll allow something to shut down. The body will shut down itself sometimes. So we thank God for His amazing grace at that point. So as I continue, usually I'm going to deal with the PTSD. The PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, usually things that we experience in our daily lives are a cause and effect, meaning it caused something, which the event caused something to happen, right? And this happened because what has happened to it. For example, some people catch colds because why? They were exposed to a virus or infection, right? So a cause and effect, right? We get itchy because an irritant has affected our skin. We get hungry because our body needs nourishment on a regular basis, or thirsty because we aren't sufficiently hydrated. So it's a cause and effect thing. Because that happened, this is going to take place. Now, PSTD, again, post-traumatic stress disorder, is similar, but it's also different. Why? It's because it happens when someone has experienced a traumatic event and their mind and body are having a difficult time recovering from that experience, whether it was something per se that happened to them or were they a witness to or affected it by any kind of way. So however it affected them, right? But it happened. But the difference is between the PTSD, again, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other cause and effect things are mentioned is the unpredictability of it all. Meaning that you can't pinpoint, when something's unpredictable, you cannot predict it or say or guess, or it's going to be that way because it'll come a whole different way than what you think or thought, right? It doesn't happen immediately, but it does. It doesn't have one specific cause, and it can reoccur at any time after any event, as often as it pleases. I would say for as long as it pleases. So it doesn't matter how long had happened. It could happen right away. It could take a week, a month, or years before it happens. Before that monster start coming up, right? So emotional and I would say psychological trauma is the result of extraordinary stressful events that shatter the sense of security, making you feel like helpless in a dangerous world. Now, psychological trauma basically can leave you struggling with upsetting emotions. They could be memories per se and anxiety that won't go away. And sometimes we got to watch things and stuff happen because sometimes people start getting anxiety and things of that are going on. And we just got to be careful and we have to watch and pray because sometimes they are dealing with certain things and we just brushing off. Oh, they'll be all right. It can also leave you feeling numb disconnected, and unable to trust other people. Then there you become, you get kind of, like, oh my goodness, you can't trust nobody. I'm looking for the word, but you can't trust nobody. Um, and you don't know who to trust. You just don't know who to trust, right? So then, with a traumatic experience as such, often involves a threat of life or safety, because you always think that somebody want to get you. Whatever the situation, somebody's after me, and it leaves you feeling overwhelmed, leave that person feeling overwhelmed and isolated again, and which can result in trauma. And even at the part that it doesn't involve harmful or physical harm, it still becomes traumatic. The more frightened and helpless a person becomes, the more likely they are to be traumatized. They can really get really traumatized and get, they're just too much. It's just too much for them to deal with. And you see why things happen, and especially even dealing with rape. But then sometimes you feel like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can, even with a relationship and rape and things that you had, if you have been a victim of rape, it's hard to trust people, especially the opposite sex, because everybody becomes like a suspect some kind of way along the line. And you can really mess up even a really good potentially good relationship because of mistrust, and because of the way that we deal with the situations. And sometimes we're not even aware of how we deal with the situations, but it's so prevalent. Um, it can't it's right there for you to see. But because we deal with so many things, we don't recognize that until sometimes someone has to bring it to our attention. Now, trauma symptoms typically last from like a few days to a few months. Gradually, what happens is it fades as you process the unsettling event. And again, the event is the thing that happened that caused you to be traumatic, or that caused the trauma, right? But even when you are feeling better, you may be troubled from time to time, and you can be troubled with like the memory of it, the painful memories of it, or the emotions, right? Especially in response to triggers, such as an anniversary of the or event, or something that reminds you of that trauma, especially if someone passed or whatever, and they have a birthday coming, or things of that nature. Those things kind of trigger that, and you get into that certain place there. But note this: if your psychological trauma symptoms continue and exist, don't ease up, right? Or if they become worse, and if you find that you are unable, per se, to move on from that event for a prolonged period of time, you may be experiencing the post-traumatic stress, right? And meaning that, while emotional trauma is a normal response to a disturbing event, because it's normal for somebody to get traumatized. You get traumatized. For us going like per se, it was normal. I would say, like, say for COVID. People have different things, say for COVID, but it was traumatizing as far as I'm concerned to me, because I experienced it. I felt that. I experienced it, and to the point that I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be bothered nowhere with outside, with nothing from outside. And when I did get to go outside, I felt like I was an alien somewhere, and somewhere else, because it didn't even feel real. The world, and to me, didn't feel like the world, because it was totally different, right? So, totally traumatized from that. Of course, now I'm getting better. I kind of stressed out a little bit, but with precaution, per se. But when you've been traumatized for whatever reason, you're gonna be very careful. They can call you whatever they want to call you, but you know what you've been through, and so it doesn't matter what other people say. But that's your truth, and you have to live with it, not them, per se. right? So while emotional trauma is a normal response to a disturbing event, it becomes the PTSD, right? Then what happens is when your nervous system gets stuck and you remain in a psychological shock, unable to make sense to process your emotions, then what happens is when you're facing your traumas, it's not easy. That's why it feels so tempting, I would say, to just avoid the memories and try to forget it. But you can't just forget things because they're still there, especially if you have to look at things or things that would trigger those things that has happened. It's not so easy to forget. There were sometimes people say, oh, just forget about it. No, you can't. You just can't forget about it, right? But avoidance only allows the grip of trauma to grab tighter and not let go. So sometimes we have to deal with things instead of avoiding situations and things of that nature. Because sometimes our emotions will get stuck in certain places, but you have to get in there. It's like, okay, how long I'm going to stay here? How long I'm going to reside here? It's time to move on because I can't stay here with this, like, because you will get in a place where where your mind, you just get in fact you just get deeper into a depression state or whatever, where that's going to be harder for you to get out, to come out the trenches. So if you find that you having problems with a traumatic experience, and after a while I would say it disrupts your normal routine of life, for it's like going to work, washing up, and things of that nature, then you need to seek some professional help. Okay. Now, emotion, when we're dealing with these emotional symptoms of trauma, because I still haven't done the rape thing yet, and I know it won't get to it today or tonight. Um, Basically, trauma manifests, right? In the most common ways, trauma manifests. Some common, I would say, emotional symptoms of trauma includes denial, anger, sadness, and emotional outbursts. Do you know anybody like that? Victims may redirect their overwhelming emotions, they would say, they experience toward other sources, such as friends or family. Sometimes why, somebody, like, they just lash out of you at you for no reason per se. But there sometimes we have to be kind of understanding. I'm getting to the place like, okay, it's an old age or whatever, but you try to be more sympathetic, I would say, instead of being so judgmental first. Because first I'm like, yeah, right. But as you go older and you learn and you see and mature spiritually, you see that sometimes we do too much judgment. We are too judgmental, too tight. We are too judgmental. Because sometimes people are really going through really hard things, but because we are not spiritually uh, sensitive to that fact, that's where again encourage you to ask God to to sharpen our senses, and help us to be more spiritual, conscious, about that, about just not just judging people, but to see what's going on, not to judge people, but just to have that awareness of what's going on, so that maybe we can pray for them, or just be there to listen, or and they don't even, may not even know that we are praying for them, but we need God to to give us another level of that, so that we'll be able to to be able to help someone, because there are people out there that the world is really in a fix, and we have to be more aware of our surroundings and everything. And we do need that. We do need God to help us, so that we will be able to help somebody else. Because even with road rage and things like that, we cannot you don't know where people's minds are these days. So sometimes it's better to take the long road and let them go onto the short road, however they want to go. Not to argue. Let them, if they want to pass, let them move out of the way so that they can go by. Don't argue with them. Just, because you don't know where people's minds are these days. So we have to be very vigilant, and when it comes to things like that, right? So again, I'm gonna have to cut this off because my time is up. And I thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate you. You have a blessed and continue to have a wonderful night, and God bless you. And hope to see you the next time. Be blessed. Good night.